My name is Tanya Finchum, along with Alex Bishop, and we're with Oklahoma State University. Today we're in Oklahoma City to speak with Murrel McMahan. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
McMahan. And this is part of our Oklahoma 100-Year Life project, so thank you for having us today.
You're welcome.
Let's begin with having you tell us when and where you were born.
Born in Washington, Oklahoma, June 23rd, 1914.
All right. And what did your parents do for a living?
Well, my father grew up as a farmer, and he went to work the railroad, and worked the railroad for a number of years. I don't know how many years, but few. And he didn't like people to, well, he didn't like two bosses, put it that way. He didn't mind working for any one man, but when two of them got involved, one of them got laid off. And he quit the railroad and went back to farming and farmed the rest of his life. Well, left until he retired.
Which railroad did he work for? Which railroad did he work for?
Santa Fe.
And what did he farm?
Just general crops of that neighborhood down there, mostly cotton and corn. Feed for his livestock.
Did you grow up on a farm?
Yes, ma'am.
And what were some of your chores?
Just general farm.
Do you remember your first tractor?
Well, my first tractor.
Tractor.
My first tractor was a little bit of John Deere. And then I got a little bigger. Well, that wasn't a John Deere, but it was a bigger tractor than the one I had.
How many brothers and sisters do you have?
Well, I had counting my twin that passed away as just an infant. Had 4 sisters, and 2 brothers. One of them passed away at a very young age. I don't know just how old he was, 2 or 3 years old. And then the one that survived, he was 16 when he died. And sisters had a set of twin sisters and then an older sister. They all lived up into their 60s and 70s. But all of them are gone.
So there were 2 sets of twins?
Yeah.
2 sets. That's unusual in one family to have 2 sets.
Well, my mother was bearing another set of twins when she took the flu. And if a lady was with child and got the flu, you just want to knock them in the head because they was gone.
That was about how old were you?
4.
4. So 1918, the flu epidemic.
Yeah,
He had about 4.
they was. Three of my mother's sisters, as well as my mother, and my grandmother on Dad's side, all passed away of flu in 1918.
Well, did they send you away? So you wouldn't get it? No.
No, there with them.
Did your father remarry?
No, well, he did. But he had those 3 girls, my brother and me, and he promised my mother before she died that he would not bring a stepmother over her babies. And he didn't get married until my oldest son was about 2 weeks old. And he finally got married again.
So he pretty much raised you on his own?
He raised all 5 of us till we were out on our own by his own will.
Can you describe the house you grew up in?
Well, I grew up in about half a dozen houses.
Okay. The one you were in the longest then.
They was just ordinary farmhouses. Ordinary for the day and time. We were living in a little 2-room house. Like in 1920. And Dad had just bought all the kids is old enough to go to school, built their school clothes and everything. And he went to the gin with a bale of cotton. Us kids all went down to the creek playing. After we looked up and seen the smoke boiling, we ran back up and our house burned down, burnt everything we had. except the clothes we had on. And then we moved into another house for a couple of years, I guess, and then out of that and into another. They're just ordinary farmhouses.
No electricity?
Electricity? What's that?
No.
No electricity,
Or running.
no telephone, no television, no radio.
Running water?
Yeah, we'd run down 12, get a bucket, and run back to the house.
Well, who did the cooking for you? Who did the cooking?
Well, the girls done some of the cooking. When Dad was there, he done most of the cooking. But, and after the girls got married, it was just Dad and I there. Well, before the girls got married, really, if I got hungry, I went and cooked me what I wanted, or got something that was left over and ate. Dad, he run a row binder. Of course, you don't know what that is. Just cane and stuff that they planted to feed their livestock. It bundled it up, cut it and bundled it. And he ran a binder for neighbors quite a bit. That was about the only time he was away from home. Be when he'd be out somewhere working for somebody that way.
Well, where did you go to elementary school?
Where did he go?
Where did you go to school?
Iron Chapel.
Iron Chapel? How many grades?
Well, it went to the 8th grade, but I just went through the 4th, and it started in the 5th. Quit and started making a farm hand. Farm till I guess I was 20 years old when I went to work for Wilson Meatpackers.
Oh. That's here in Oklahoma City? How did you get that job?
I just went up there and stood on the line. I was back kind of in the end of the Depression. I was trying to climb out of the Depression. We hadn't made much success of it until then. I was working on the farm, 10 cents an hour and dinner. And one of my twin sisters and her husband went to work for Wilson's, and they kept, every time they come back home over the weekend, they tried to talk me into going to the city and going to work up there. Finally, I went with them, and I went out there Monday morning, Tuesday morning. Wednesday, I told him, told my brother-in-law, I said, well, if I don't get to go to work out there today, I'm going back home, catch one of the neighbors. He farm watermelons and haul watermelons for the neighbors, bring them up to the market. And I said, I'm going to catch the watermelon truck back home. Forget this stuff. Well, there wasn't but about 75 or 80 of us sitting out there on the curb wanting a job. So his brother-in-law's boss had a man on vacation. He needed somebody just for a couple of weeks. And he come out there and picked me out of the bunch. He told me, he said, I can use you for a couple of weeks, but he said, that's all I can promise. I said, well, about 2 weeks is all I want. We'll be going back home. So I went out and started driving a horse to a two-wheeled cart, cleaning up on the yard there. So when those 2 weeks was up, somebody else went on vacation, so give me another 2 weeks. When that time was up, my boss went over to the machine shop and talked to the foreman over there, and he said he could use me for a couple of weeks. So I just bounced from the machine shop back over to that job there for over a year, and never was out of a job. Always somebody else over there could use me for a couple of weeks. Then I got a chance to go to the powerhouse. We generated our own electricity and had our boilers and generators and our we was responsible for the air conditioning or the
Refrigeration.
all of the cooling, everything around there. And a friend of mine come and asked me if I'd like to go to the powerhouse or I told him I sure would. He said, well, he had the promise of the next job opening in the powerhouse. And he said, you go there and talk to the foreman down there. Talk to Charlie. He said, go there and talk to him. If he'll give you the job, I'll forfeit my claim on it and let you have it. So, the reason they had that opening in the powerhouse is one of our men in the powerhouse had a brother-in-law working over in the shop. And they got in some kind of a racket over the weekend. One of them used a knife on the other, and of course they fired both of them. And they left that opening in the powerhouse. I went down there and went to work. My boss come by after I'd talked to that fella that said he'd move over and let me go down there. I asked my boss, I said, would you give me a transfer to Powerhouse? He said, sure. You can go down there and you're just about starting a better job than what you can ever work up to where you're at. He said, you can go down and go to work. Go right ahead. So that's the last I heard about it till the next morning, and I went into work. You had to go by the watchman's office and pick up your identification tag. So I went by and picked my tag up, and that old boy said, they told me to tell you to go to the powerhouse this morning. I said, well, I didn't think about things maturing that quick. I went on down to barn, went in the dressing room and changed over into my work clothes and went to the powerhouse. Worked in there then. I put in 43 and a half years with Wilson's.
Wow. That's quite a long time.
Only job I ever asked for. Only public job I ever had. I told some of them I missed a lot in life. I never got to ask for a job.
Well, when you first came to Oklahoma City, where did you live?
I lived in, I stayed with my sister and brother-in-law for, I guess, about a month. It looked like I was going to be up there for quite a while, so I went and got me a room in the rooming house down Packetown there. Lived there till I guess I lived there for a while after I was married.
And when was that? When did you get married?
In 1934.
And how did you meet your wife?
Well, that's a good story within itself. When I met my wife, she was she was going to school over at Dibble, and they had started having high school at Dibble, and at that time, actually they went to union grades but they had full curriculum of high school. And they was having their graduation program at the end of the term. I run around with about 5 other kids that had horses. And we all, well, 3 of them was going to school over there. We went over there for the graduation program. And they had 5 of the graduating girls, and then they'd put up a big sheet across the front of the stadium and drawed big sunflower on for each one of the girls. And where the seed pod goes was those girls' face. That's all you could see was their face. As the program was over, those 5 girls came out and started down to the store. The school was about a couple of blocks from the store down there. They started down to the store to get them some refreshments or something. And all of us boys were standing out there in the group. Some of the boys that went to school there, and the others of the hoodlum bunch out there visiting. The girls come out by us, and they stopped. And I guess I was the only one in the bunch that didn't know to introduce me to the girls. They went on, we went on, got on our horses and started home. Stopped over there a mile from the school. Yeah. One of the boys left the crowd there to go up to his house. We was all standing there, visiting there at the graveyard. And somebody said something about the girls. I don't know, 13, 14-year-old kids, but we still realized there was some girls somewhere. And I told them boys, I said, I'm going to marry Opal. They all like to fell off their horses laughing. That is the stupidest thing they ever heard of. She was a little over 5 years older than I was. He said, you don't think she's going to wait around till you get old enough to get married, do you? I said, well, just hang around and watch it. Well, I didn't see her again till, I don't know, I guess about 2.5, 3 years. And I started running into her to dances or parties. Finally, I started dating her. And we dated for about, I guess, 4 years. going to work up here. The Wilsons at that time. And I'd go home just about every weekend. Went down that weekend. About time to leave to go home. I could come back to the city. I asked her, I said, if she'd marry me. She said, yeah. I said, when? I said, well, I'll have to work around, change days off with a friend of mine that I worked with. Because you, marriage license was just good for 3 days if you didn't use it. And the courthouse wasn't open on Saturday. And I said, I'll have to swap also and be off Monday. And that's all Monday, before time for me to leave, come back to the city, we can get your mother and dad to go with us. We run down for sale and go down to the courthouse, get her license, and go upstairs there and get the JP to marry us. She said, now, I've got a question. So you think you are ready to settle down with me and leave these other women alone? I said, well, I think so. So, next weekend, we went down for sale and went upstairs, and JP married us and went home. All of my friends and her friends and people that knew us started taking guesses about how long that would last. Some of them give us 30 days, some of them give us 6 months, but that 6 months was about as long as any of them. Well, it lasted 63 and a half years. In the 63 and a half years that we was married, and about 4 years of dating off and on. We never had a argument or a fuss. We didn't always agree on everything, but if we didn't agree on it, we'll just agree to disagree and forget it. And we never lost our temper when we would differ on a problem. We'd just go ahead and let whoever's wrong be wrong. We didn't argue about it. And one night we was playing dominoes with my sister and her husband. something come up about something that had happened 2 or 3 years before that. I was telling the story, and when I got through, my wife said, nah, that wasn't the way it happened. And she gave her version of it, same thing. And I said, well, that's the way you remember it, and that's the way I remember it. So it don't make a difference anyhow. That's 2 years in the past. That's the end of the discussion. After a while, my sis said, I didn't realize that us girls had raised such a milk toast. And I said, why, what? She said, you always let Opal win the argument. I said, well, whatever, it don't make any difference anyhow. Don't amount to nothing. She said, I wouldn't let Pete win all the arguments for nothing. I said, well, you've never heard me and Opal screaming around at each other and calling them things that we would be ashamed of. And I said, you and him fussing just about as much at the time as you're enjoying your visit. I said, it don't make a difference when something's already passed and gone. But we never lost our temper with each other on any of them little old things that come up.
How many children did the two of you have?
5.
5.
Had 3 sons and 2 daughters. And we got a whole tribe now. Grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren.
Well, who was the disciplinarian?
Do I?
Who disciplined the children? You or your wife?
Well, just whichever one of us it happened to be
Happened to be.
there to do it. I had one of the best women in the world. She was a good mother. She was a good wife. Everybody loved Opal. And I think she done a great job. I got 5 kids and a whole swarm of grandkids. There's not one of the bunch, unless it's the one that was in the Navy. I've been around him since he got out of the Navy. But as far as I know, well, we visited with him out there a couple of weeks here a couple of years ago, and he didn't do any drinking or if he drinks, and he didn't use any bad language while we was around him. As far as I know, I've not got an offspring in the whole 20 some odd that uses bad language or none of them drinks or smokes or chews or dips. And they don't take any other kind of dope. So somebody done a good job.
Or somebody's, more than one.
Raising that bunch of kids. And all of them, well, all of them that's old enough to know what they're doing or have joined the church. They're living Christian lives, living for the Lord.
Well, how important was religion in your life?
We're all Baptist.
And did you go to church as a child?
Well, after Mother passed away, Dad just never did feel like getting 5 kids ready to go to church. And basically, we was all out of church until we got grown and got out on our own. All 3 of my boys are deacons in their churches. And I was I still on the deacon roll, but I'm not very active as a deacon anymore. But I was very active for a lot of years before I kind of let up.
What got you back into church? What took you back to church?
What took me back to church?
Mm-hmm.
Well, our boys was big enough that they started going back to church once in a while, and oldest daughter, she'd go. Had a good neighbor down there that come by and pick our kids up and take them to church. And got her one Sunday morning, and I was doing something outside, working on something. I always had an old car I was working on or something like that. I went in the house or something, and the kids wasn't getting ready to go to church. What's the matter, you kids? You're not getting ready to go to church. Mr. Carr be by here pretty soon, and you won't be ready. Oldest son said, well, Dad, we just got thinking about this, and we just not going back to church until your mother starts going with us. He said, we're tired of having to, somebody else having to pick us up and take us to church and then bring us home. So I just turned around, went on about my business, and the next Sunday morning we got up. I started getting ready. I said, now I'm going to take the kids to church this morning. So that's all we got ready, and we all got ready to go. We started going to church down there in Newcastle. And we never missed a church service then. And I don't know, I better go on back, I guess, about probably a year and a half, 2 years. And I was saved, and joined the church. And the wife, well, when I would have made my profession of faith, she went up with me, made her profession of faith. I think she had actually accepted Christ quite a while before that, but just never did say anything about it. And I was saved last week of August, and when they started selecting their teacher, getting their teachers ready together for the new school year, church year, pastor, he was kindly over the committee that was working on getting teachers. He came to me and he said, we want you to teach younger intermediate boys. And I looked at him and I said, you don't want me to try to teach them boys. I said, I'm not qualified for that. I had been saved, but about 2 weeks. He said, well, that's who the whole group wants. They want you to take them intermediate boys. He said there's been a woman teaching them, but you got a couple little problems in there that she can't handle. Said, they want you to take them. I said, well, I'll see what I can do with them. So I started teaching them kids. And found out that her problem was that my nephew, we helped raise him and his his mother and dad separated, and they both worked. We kept him for most of the time there till he got in high school. And him and his little buddy would get to cutting up in class, and that woman couldn't do anything with him. I got up there and started my classes. They got to nudging each other back there. They would sit there in a row of seats right in front of my teaching. And I called them by name, and I said, "Get up and sit right there." Sit right down in front of me. I never had a bit of trouble in the world with them. I taught them for a little over a year. And young married people, their teacher was elderly gentleman, and his wife passed away, and his girl and her husband was living at Moore, and they wanted the old gentleman to move in with them so they could kind of help see after him. He was getting pretty well up in age. So he left the church and moved to Moore. And the pastor came and said, "Murrel, that young married class wants you to teach you." I said, "Preacher, I've got to be able to try and teach that bunch of young married people. I don't have any education. I haven't been studying the Bible very long." And I said, "You got almost every one of those young married men has got some college work behind them. Some of them almost ready to graduate from college." And me tried to teach him. "Well," he said, "you're the one that they want. They've asked us to get you to teach him." I said, "Well, if that's what they want, here goes."
You seem to do a lot of service for church. Have you done any other volunteer service or other service in your life?
Do what now?
You seem to have done a lot of service with the church, but have you done any other type of volunteer type of service or service-oriented work for others?
I done little everything in that church down there, besides preach. I sung in the choir.
Did you ever build a church?
Did I ever build a church? Mm-hmm. I put in between 30 and 35 years volunteer with campers on missions. And what we done, we constructed church buildings, repaired church buildings, whatever needs to be done, tear down petitions and move them so they have different space for different things. And I worked with them for about 30 years.
Was that before or after retirement? Did you do that before retirement or after retirement?
After retirement, yeah. Well, I have built, I've done little work on one building, and me and another guy with a little Indian help put up a building for the Indians down close to the Lake Texoma before I retired, but then after I retired, but I done most of my volunteer church building, church work.
Are you still actively doing that today?
Sure.
Are you still actively doing that type of work today, or?
Oh, about 4 years ago, our guy that done most of the leading and most of the finding the churches that are making the decision where they would work, or the groups wanted somebody to need some church work done, and they'd come and talk to Bob about it, and Bob would follow up on it and get the jobs located and everything, all the arrangements. And he dropped out. Well, his wife's health got so bad, and his began to fail too. And this other guy that took over just never did call me when he'd started the job. And it was long back there when this kind of recession started, and the church building just went to the bottom. It just, they wasn't doing very much. And he never did call me. All the work I'd done after Bob dropped it was in his church down there in Loudon. They was putting up a 3-story building for the young people. The young people's building. And Bob called me on that, and I went down. I guess I worked about 2 weeks. And they run out of money. They just building as they got money to build. They was paying as they went. And I went back the second time and worked about 2.5 weeks. And they run out of money. But they finally finished it all left. And I sat around here for a while doing nothing. Sue was already volunteering at their hospital. And she, her and the girl that at that time was seeing after most of the volunteers, Sue got me to go up and go to work at the hospital. So I went up and talked to that gal, and she said, and I told her, I said, now, I'll help you, but if they get a church building job set up, I said, I'll go back and help them till they get through, and then I'll come back here and go to work for you. She want me on those terms. She said, come up and go to work.
How many days a week do you do that?
I work Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays up there
And what are your hours?
from 9 till 4.
9 to 4. So, what do you do on your day off? That's a full-time job.
Well, this is one of my days off.
Talking to us.
I put in most of my days off catching up on the junk mail and paper.
Do you read a lot today? Do you read a lot? Do you like to read, or do you read?
Yeah, I usually got some reading it if I'm not doing anything else.
Did you serve in the military during World War II?
No. No, the powerhouse worked around the clock, 24 hours a day, 365 days out of the year, and had 4 shifts, or 3 shifts, and when I went to work in the powerhouse, I went to work with the aim of learning everything there was in that powerhouse to learn as quick as I could. If I wasn't working on something, seen one of the other boys doing something on his job, I went and helped him until I knew every job connected to the powerhouse. And there was 26 of us fellas in the powerhouse. By that time, the boiler room, when I went to work down there, the boiler room was just considered a different department altogether, but they, of course, there's just a wall between them. And they finally put the boiler room on the same payroll with the rest of the powerhouse. And when the draft come up, I could, if the boss, something happened that somebody who didn't show up or got sick or something, the boss just called me and tell me to come in on whatever job it was that I was needed on. And he got it in his head that he needed me worse than the Army did. And he would intercept my draft notices, and I'd never see them. And I never did see but one of my draft notices. And somewhere or another it got around, and I got it before he did. Well, when he come out and found out I had it, he told one of the other boys, said, "Tell Murrel to get up here, I need to talk to her." I went up there, he said, "Where's that draft notice?" I had it in my pocket. He said, "I want it." I said, "Well, I ain't any better than these other boys." I said, if they want me down there," he said, "I want your draft notice." And he said, "I can tell them guys enough lies on you that you couldn't go to work for them at all." And so I gave it to him, and I never did see another draft notice. And he said, "You're just about as much in service as any of them guys, so you're packing meat for them to eat." So I never was drafted. There was, I guess, 4 of our boys that went to service. I think one of them was the only one that, of our 4, that was the actual combat. The rest of them, some of them hadn't been in long enough to be put in combat, and I think it was one of them that got into some other part of it that wasn't. And the one that was in combat, he got the whole muscle shot off of one leg. And he come back and went back to work with us, but he always limped on that leg.
So what you said you going back earlier, you were a twin. Did your twin die in infancy?
My twin.
Your twin?
Passed away. I don't know just how old she was, but she passed away when she was a little bitty. She was, I think he's just a few months old.
Just a few months old. And you had a brother that passed away too. You also had a brother that passed away early
At 16.
at 16.
Yeah.
Was that the flu epidemic too?
We had a little old young filly that he was breaking to ride, and he got on her one day there, and just I don't know whether he even had a bridle on her or not, and Dad had a spot between the house and the barn. Our barn and house is about 135, 40 yards apart. And he had a spot out there where his equipment, when something get wore out, he'd just leave it sitting out there in the middle of in this spot. And we'd put anything else out there that didn't want. And then we had one of the chairs broke down, and we throwed the part that had left out there in that yard. And that little old pony, when he got on her, she come down, went right across there, and she got tangled up in that old chair bottom and fell with him. And one of them chair posts bruised his appendix. And he was sick around there for 2 or 3 days before Dad realized how sick he was. And he called a neighbor that had a car, and they come down and picked Dad and brother up and took them through Blanchard to the doctor. As soon as the doctor looked at him, he said, get him in my car and let's take him to the hospital. So they brought him to the city hospital. And they operated on him. And his appendix had busted. And they got through operating on him and took him back to his room, and he was running a high temperature. And the doctor put a special nurse over him, and he said, don't you leave that room. You stay right there with him, take care of him till he gets over this surgery. And Dad had been up there 2 or 3 days, and he hadn't even had time to take a bath or anything else. So after they got that special nurse with him, Dad come over to his sisters that lived on 25th Street down there, and get him a bath and change clothes and everything. And before he got through and got back to the hospital, they called and said for him to get back over as quick as he could. And when he got back, brother was already gone. That nurse, he had maneuvered around some way and got her to leave the room for a minute. There was something he wanted. And as soon as she walked out, he took the cap off of his ice pack and drank the water. And that is, well, he died just a few minutes after he emptied that ice pack.
About what year would that have been?
Huh?
About what year would that have been?
That was in 24, I believe.
So you were about 10?
You had a strong father.
Huh?
Your father was a pretty strong man. Yeah. What did you ever think that you'd make it to 100?
Well, I never did even give it a thought. I can't remember ever thinking anything at all about it. But,
Well, what do you think some of your secrets are? What's your secret to a long life, do you think?
well, the only thing I ever done to hard work, stay busy. But I think the only reason I'm here today is because God ain't through with me. I don't know what He's got laid out for me, but I think there's something that God wants me to be involved in, and I think that's the only reason I'm here today.
Tanya usually likes to ask this question, but do you have anything on your bucket list?
Do what?
Anything on your bucket list you want to do?
No.
No. Did you tell? He went on a lot of hunting and
Oh,
camping trips, right?
oh yeah, hunting, fishing.
I couldn't remember.
Yeah, he used to go on deer hunts and with his friends up in Wyoming and Colorado, and fished all of his life.
So not a. You don't want to go on one last hunting or fishing trip or camping trip?
Well, I'd like to go on another fishing trip, but none of the kids ever have time to go with me, and they just haven't fit. If I talk about, I've got a boat sitting down in one of my boys' barns. Been in there for about 5 years. Like it's been about 5 or 6 years.
15.
I put it out twice, brought it up here and cleaned it up, changed plugs in it, tuned it up, got it to running. And the last time I had it up here, I took it, I guess I'd Draper. And ran it around out there a little bit, brought it back, took it back down there and set it in the barn.
Louise?
Now, every good fisherman has a story. Do you have a good fisherman story?
Okay.
Oh, I don't reckon I've got any.
The biggest one you ever caught?
Well, I guess about the biggest one I ever caught was about 10 pounds. I never did actually fish for big fish. I like channel cat and crappie.
Did you ever noodle? Did you ever go noodling?
I never was a noodler. If I'd ever had a good dedicated noodler as a friend, I may have took up noodling.
He can swim well enough, he could have.
And the nearest thing I ever done to noodling was down there on the South Canadian. Me and brother-in-law went over there one day, and some of the kids were with us. I don't know whether Sue was and a bunch of them, but anyhow, some of my kids and some of his kids went over there with us. And we was just around that shallow water. And there's a bunch of bushes out there that the water was up over. We got over there and I was feeling around in there. I think we picked up one or two little fish. Directly I felt something, a snake. So I just raised him up and threw him out on the bank. And you talk about a bunch of kids scattered. But some of them killed it. And my brother-in-law that was in there with me, boy, he took off for the bank. And I never did give the snake a chance to do anything. I had to hold just about the middle of it, and it was about that long. And when I come out of that brush, I already had his speed up. I turned it loose and threw it out there on that bank.
Dad has an elk head and a deer head in his bedroom that are trophies from a couple of his shoots, his hunts. Likes to hunt.
We was fishing one day. I don't remember now what lake we was on. I believe we went back over and fishing at night. But anyhow, Sue hooked into something and she messed with it around there a while and dragged it out. And it was a rod and a reel. Somebody had lost out there. Pretty soon she was ready to go to the house. I think her mother asked her what she wanted to go to the house for or something. She said, I may get a hold of another one of them rods and reels and it may have a manhole to it, the other end of it.
Well, that was the time when they had found a body, one or two bodies in Texoma, and
my.
one at, it's one in, I think it was Thunderbird, and one in Eufaula. And we were fishing at, I think it was at Thunderbird. I said,
Well, when history is written, what would you like it to say about you?
Do I?
When history is written, what do you want it to say about you? Or what would you like it to say about you?
Oh, I, I wouldn't. Doesn't make me much difference what they say about me after I'm gone.
What do you want to be remembered for? What would you think?
Well,
What would be your legacy?
I guess about the best thing they could say about me is about my service for the Lord, in church building, and I used to do lots of visitation work, personal witnessing.
you worked with the young people, Boy Scouts, and at church, and took the FFA on trips and did all sorts of things with young people. He had a big impact.
We when Bob Martin was kind of overseeing this group, he took a bunch out to Glorietta, the Baptist installation at Mexico, and he just made an agreement with the fellow that was over the installation out there at that time, that we would come out there every year for 10 years and do whatever kind of work they needed done, and one year out there they would have every summer there'd be 1 week of youth work and 1 week of preachers and 1 week of something else, and all down the road there, and we thought there 1 year, and most of them had already come on back home. There was me and I don't know, 2 or 3 other couples still out there, and we went down to eat breakfast one morning, and I was kind of the tail end of the bunch getting down there. I was getting my breakfast, This man come in, he picked up his breakfast, and he said, well, how about me joining you folks? The rest of them was sitting at the table down there. I said, well, come on down and join us. As we was getting our breakfast and getting on down there, this guy said something to me that just gave me the impression that he didn't know Jesus as his personal Savior. And that was the last day for the Catholic preachers, whatever they call them.
Priest.
And we got over there and sat down, and I introduced him to the others around there. He was a Catholic minister, and he started eating, and I there was something told me that the old boy wasn't a child of God, that he never had been saved. So I just started, and I just took him right down what the Baptists call the road to baptism, and I was giving him the full works. And you never saw a fella eat fast in all of your life. And he ate that meal just as soon as he got through. He jumped up and took off. But I think he began to realize that there was something wrong here, something that he didn't have that he ought to. But he was over there by himself. The others getting ready to go home. And I was giving the plan of salvation to a Catholic bishop. But it didn't make me any difference what he was claiming if he didn't know Christ. I didn't know how to get there.
Do you have a favorite song, church song?
Oh, not really. I loved just about all of those old hymns that we used to sing so much.
If he's sitting
But,
around, he sings Amazing Grace. That's his favorite.
I wouldn't hardly know which one to say.
Amazing Grace.
Well, I liked it.
Can you sing it for us?
No, it's been too long.
Okay. We'll just hum it then.
But
Amazing Grace.
Did you ever consider moving away from Oklahoma?
no, I never have had any desire to live anywhere besides Oklahoma.
Where do you consider home here?
Well, I guess actually if I was said where I considered my hometown here, it would be at Newcastle. I have lived all around Oklahoma City, and I bought a piece of land out by Luther, and we lived out there 5 years. But
Newcastle.
I guess I've got, actually, as far as the concentration of friends, I've probably got more friends at Newcastle than have any other one place. We buried a lady Monday that one of the first families that I got acquainted with after we moved to Newcastle. And she was 101 years old, almost a year older than me.
Ah.
And most all of my old friends have already gone to heaven. They were there waiting for me to get there.
Well, I'm glad you waited long enough to talk to us. We appreciate you sharing your stories with us today. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.